It's one thing to have a dream of making space more accessible to all. It's another for an incredible team to collectively turn that dream into reality.
The Interplanetary Podcast. The exploration of space for the benefit of all humankind. Your hosts here in England, Chris Carney and Matthew Russell.
Oh yeah, baby, Dickie! Dickie. Oh, I love him.
Of course, that's when we say Dickie B. We do mean Sir Richard Branson.
Well, his friends call him Dickie B, don't they? So
I think so. I'm going to call him Dickie Pickles.
I like it. I'm going with that.
Just for the Americans, they might not be aware that Branson or Branstons is a form of pickle over here.
Yeah.
So it might be a bit of an obscure joke, but yeah, Dickie Pickles I think is quite good, isn't it?
I actually cracked that joke the other day in a school when I was talking about I was talking about Dickie B, and I was like, he had the record shop to start off with. The other, a record company. He had the airlines. He's had the trains. He's had the cola, the phone, the pickle, and there's like a bunch of 7-year-olds just looking at me going, no idea what you're talking about.
It's actually quite amazing, actually, that virtually everything that Richard Branson does was ultimately funded by Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells.
I didn't think about it like that. That's amazing.
But literally, Richard Branson was almost bust. Yeah. In fact, he was bust. Like, people were coming round to sort of, the receivers were coming round and everything. And Tubular Bells was this complete surprise hit. Yeah. Mainly thanks to The Exorcist. But it was a total surprise hit and rescued him, created a, Virgin, which he then sold to EMI, and everything else has then sort of just sprung out of that. It's incredible, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it all began there, and it's all going to space.
But we'll get on to Dickie B a bit later on. But I thought before we start on, it's a Space News Week. I know you love a Space News Week, Chris.
I love it. I love Space News Week. It's the best.
They come round quicker than I imagine. I was thinking, we've only just done one.
Yeah.
I realised it was 5 episodes ago.
They grow up so fast.
So next week I've got an episode with Bruce McCandless III, the son of Bruce McCandless II.
Amazing. The
iconic US astronaut. So that's a great little interview as well. I really liked Bruce. He was a lovely, lovely bloke. So check that out for an interview next week. But before we start, Chris, did you know today, on the day that the podcast comes out, the 5th of July... by the way, congratulations to all the Americans, 4th of July.
Yeah,
that's when we're
happy telling the king to sod off the day. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Sort of strange for an Englishman to say it, I suppose, but hey. The Earth will be at Aphelion tomorrow.
Oh, right. I was going to go there myself. Is that new club?
It is. Quite close to Mars. No, as well it's not a club. I don't even know why I'm even laughing at that. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Stop entertaining me.
Well, as you know, there's the thing called periapsis and apapsis, which are basically the nearest and furthest away in an orbit that you can be. And when you hear the word helion in there instead, perihelion and aphelion, it means orbit around the sun, right? And we're at Aphelion tomorrow, which is strange because you would think that when it's the hottest it is, like it is right now, as in England, it's actually quite gloriously hot, middle of the summer type thing. We've only just had the summer solstice, of course. Yeah. And but we're actually the furthest away point you can be.
Oh, how's all that work then?
What's incredible about that? Do you know what the distance? The variance in distance is. It's actually quite surprising.
Well, I generally thought we're about 93 million miles away from the sun.
Which is about right. At perihelion, when we're closest, how many millions of miles do you think we are?
Oh, I don't know. Is it vary by quarter of a mil, half a mil, something like that?
Well, no, it's quite significant. So it's 91,400,000.
Oh,
when it's close. So, that's a significant difference, and it's a 93. And it's 94.5 million when it's furthest away, like now. So there's a good 3 million miles of difference in the orbit.
But this doesn't actually truly, I mean, because that's kind of like, it's chump change, isn't it, compared to the actual distance? So it is,
Yeah.
it's a different factor that is causing this hotter weather than the distance from the sun.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's about 3%, isn't it? It's like a sort of 3% difference either way. But it's, I mean, obviously, really what causes the seasons, we know it can't be the distance from the sun because, of course, down in Australia, it's wintertime.
Yeah.
So it would be a bit odd, wouldn't it? Because Australia's definitely not nearer. Definitely not nearer at the moment. Because that would be a very funny shaped planet. It would be more like Oumuamua.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's the tilt of the Earth that gives the seasons.
It's all about the tilt.
There is quite interesting. I mean, often, by the way, Aphelion is normally the 4th of July, it would seem. Most of the Aphelions recently have been 4th of July or thereabouts, but occasionally it's the 5th and occasionally it's the 3rd. So what do you think is affecting that date the most?
What could be affecting that date the most? Leap years?
No, nothing to do with leap years.
Oh, sorry. Is it to do with... I'm out. Sorry. Go on.
Well, ignore the leap years. Yeah, but the thing that changes our orbit the most, that changes that date a bit, is the Earth-Moon system.
Of course, the moon. Yes. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Our stability, our little stability globe.
Yeah. Well. If you imagine there's a barycenter, the center of mass between the Earth and the Moon, that is actually in a really stable orbit around the Sun. But of course, the Earth and the Moon are kind of orbiting each other around that barycenter. So it actually does make a bit of a difference and changes whether it's going to be. It actually defines the timing of the perihelion, aphelion in any given year, is depending on where in the orbit the Earth and Moon around their barycenter are. Isn't that amazing? It's
superb. It's Einsteinian glory, isn't it?
Of course, there's other sort of larger changes known as the Milankovitch cycles and things like that and precession and things like that are affecting the date that it falls on. But yeah, the one that sort of changes it year on year is really the moon, the moon's effect on us.
Superb.
Now we're at aphelion, we're only getting 93.55% of the radiation from the sun that we do at perihelion.
Yes.
So you would think it would have an effect on the weather, but it's really complicated. Because you'd think, maybe Australia and all those get hotter because they have their summer when they're closer to the Earth. And of course, there is a little bit of truth in that. The Northern Hemisphere summer obviously occurs when the solar radiation is at its lowest, but Northern Hemisphere averages are about 2.3 degrees centigrade warmer than those in the Southern Hemisphere. Why do you think that is?
Is it because the top leans in more?
You do realise that the Earth is a globe, don't you? Not a tic tac.
I'm sorry, I'm really not on the ball today with this.
No. Well, it's actually, of course, that there's more land in the Northern Hemisphere.
Oh my!
So that gets heated.
What? It's because there's more. Yeah, because the Pacific takes up so much of the
Southern Hemisphere. Yeah, and of course that's much harder to heat up.
Yes,
it's much harder to heat up the sea than it is to heat up the land. Yeah, it's warmer in the Northern Hemisphere because of that. 2.3 degrees centigrade warmer.
I'm going to go. Obviously, I'm going to go and tell this story later on and pretend that I've known that for ages.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
because of the way that you sweep around an orbit, particularly elliptical orbits, perihelion and aphelion don't have the same time either. So the Earth's orbital speed is actually at a minimum when it's reaching this aphelion like it is at the moment.
Yeah.
And so it takes the planet slightly longer to sweep that bit of the orbit. And so therefore, the summer in the Northern Hemisphere lasts about 93 days, whereas it only lasts 89 in the Southern Hemisphere.
But I mean, technically, it's just still quite hot down there, even though it's not summer. I mean, I was in Malawi during autumn time, and it was like, pretty warm.
Yeah, I think that's because it's near the equator rather than. I think if you went down to the South Pole, you'd find it was a little bit chilly.
It gets a bit cold down there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does get pretty cold, apparently. So, yeah, I thought those were really interesting facts about today's Aphelion.
I love it. Absolutely love it.
The person in the street would be surprised that during the Northern Hemisphere summer, we're actually the furthest away that we can be from the sun.
Yeah.
By,
totally.
by 3 million miles as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And that drop up to 93.55% of the radiation. I mean, that seems like it's pretty significant, right?
A cracking bit of news, that.
Yeah, good. Yeah. And I've also got a birthday that I thought was worth mentioning because I doubt we've ever shouted out this person on the podcast before, and that is an astronomer known as Louise Freeland Jenkins.
Great name.
Who was born on this day in 1888, and she basically compiled catalogues of stars that were within 10 parsecs of the sun. And we'll actually get onto a paper that's very similar to that later on. It's a pretty important catalogue of stars. It's good to know what stars are nearby, right?
Yeah, definitely. We might need that information sometime in the future.
She died in 1970s, which meant that I guess she got to see people landing on the moon. And for someone that born in 1888, that must have been mind blowing.
Yeah, completely. I mean, it's such a leap in technology and our culture from an 1888, literally Victorian times.
Yeah, and when in 1921, after sort of working in Pittsburgh, I mean, she was born in Massachusetts, but she went to Allegheny Observatory in Pittsburgh.
Allegheny.
Yeah, I reckon you might be right there. But yeah, in 1921, she moved to Japan.
Huh.
And you think, gosh, I'm always amazed just how adventurous people were back in those sort of days. Like to go to Japan then must have been really difficult.
Yeah, it's huge.
Flight has only just been invented, so presumably she didn't fly there. This is like a voyage of some unbelievably hard voyage to get there.
Yeah.
So yeah, and she sort of went to and fro. Her father died in 1925, so she came back, but then she went back out and taught again out in Japan, and then returned in 1932 to work at Yale University Observatory. So, a pretty exciting life, and associated herself with Japan. But yeah, known for her star catalogues, her research into trigonometric parallax of nearby stars and variable stars. So an all-round legend astronomer. So Louise Freeland Jenkins, and of course there's even a Jenkins crater on the moon.
Ah, amazing. Well, that's a good salute to her.
If you've got a crater on the moon, you've done all right.
Yeah, we've done okay there.
Chris, I don't know if you know, but last week I talked about the Tiangong.
I do.
The Tiangong is the Chinese space station. And what do you know what happened this week?
Well, I do believe there may have been an EVA. Is that right?
It is. There was an EVA, which is the first time the Chinese have done this since their one and only time in 2008.
Amazing. Well in Chinese.
It's a big deal because this actually coincides with the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party, ruling Communist Party. So
yeah,
I think this space prestige is very important for China right now. So that's really cool for them. And last week, I don't know if you noticed, I couldn't remember what the other name for Taikonaut was.
Oh, that's all right. You can't remember everything, Matt.
I can't remember everything, but they're called Heaven Navigators. So
amazing.
Like Heavenly Palace and all those kind of and Heavenly Transporter and all these kind of things and Heavenly Telescope.
They're so much better at this.
But yes, Heavenly Navigator, which is Hang Chanshuan, is the name of their astronauts in sort of Chinese as well as taikonauts.
Amazing. I love it. Heavenly Navigators.
Heavenly Navigators. So yeah, it was only earlier on today really that Louis Boming and Tang Hongbo, who went out on a 7-hour spacewalk. That's pretty brutal.
It is actually astonishing, like that, how long they are actually out there. But it's just a lot of it's about cost as well, isn't it? It's like we're putting you out there. You're just going to have to work a full-on shift here. There's no lunch break.
And I do know. I mean, that is incredibly physically demanding. As in, when you hear about astronauts, they say that that it almost takes the nails out of your fingers and stuff like that when you're working that hard, because it's pretty rough working in those spacesuits. Louis and Tang would have definitely felt the pain doing that one.
Yeah, without doubt.
For sure. And Ni Haisheng, who was the quote from last week, he was commanding that mission from inside the Tiangong. So they went out, they elevated some panoramic camera. They were testing the robotic arm that I mentioned that I wasn't quite sure had actually gone up, but it definitely has gone up because that's what they were working on. And they put some foot stops and things like that into the robotic arm so that they could actually sort of climb along it. And apparently they were supported while on the robotic arm while they carried out some other work. And these spacesuits are brand new, so these are like newly developed spacesuits by the Chinese. So they're probably the most sophisticated EVA suits that have been out in space, I'd imagine. Yeah. Seems quite light. 130 kilograms is what they weighed. So that seems like that's a pretty, that's a pretty light spacesuit, I think.
Yeah. It's nothing up there though, is it?
No. Well, it's weird because momentum still exists. So if you're trying to move around, you still have to move the object. It's just that you don't fall. It's just that gravity's not doing that.
Yeah.
So it's like when you're pushing things, it still requires effort. Yeah,
definitely.
When you think about space, you think that everything's really light and everything just moves around. It's not quite like that. I think it would take some time to get used to that kind of change in the physics.
Yeah.
It must be weird. It must be weird. And of course, I guess the closest you can get is training in a swimming pool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think
I wonder if they sort of start to add eventually there's going to be sort of robotic sort of equipment inside, which is going to move things forward. I'm sure they're working on something like that.
Exoskeleton, robotic exoskeleton type things. I think a lot of these things is all down to cost, isn't it, and how useful they'll be, and whether they,
of course,
launching up.
Yeah, if they can still manage by sending 2 people out for 7 hours with no robotic arms, then they'll carry on doing that.
and I'll tell you what a big deal this is in China, by the way. Guess how many views it had on Weibo, which, if you don't know what Weibo is, it's like the sort of Chinese Twitter. Guess how many views this spacewalk had?
A lot of people in China, Matt. So I'm going to go with 10 million.
10 million is not a bad guess. 200 million.
Whoa.
So, this is a big deal. It's a big deal. So
That's amazing.
In China.
Well done, China.
You know that the International Space Station is at actually a kind of weird inclination in its orbit, which actually makes it rubbish as a staging post to go to the moon. But it doesn't make it rubbish in terms of being able to launch Soyuz from Baikonur up to the International Space Station. So it's at this horrible inclination for that, basically, so that this old Soyuz spacecraft can actually get to the International Space Station. But of course, China want to collaborate with the Russians and get cosmonauts onto the Tiangong.
Yeah,
that's opened up a really interesting possibility. And Dmitry Rogozin has been speaking to the Europeans, Philippe Baptiste, who's the president of CNES, the French space agency, about potentially having human launch capability from French Guiana.
Fantastic.
And I should imagine that would massively increase the chances of Matthias Maurer and Christopher Reti going up as European astronauts to Tiangong. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. I mean, we want more of this. We want more capabilities of launching people up. So that would be great. And I guess the French are ramping things up then. And like if that happens, then what will we have then? Three people launch sites, 3 personnel launch sites.
Well, no, there'd be more than that because there'll be Baikonur. There's obviously of course there's the Chinese one.
We've just been talking about
which we've just been talking about, and then potentially French Guiana, which would be awesome.
Amazing. Yeah, that's so cool.
And all the launches this week, by the way, there's like I think four rocket launches this week. They're all Chinese, and that should say something about like the massive space ambition of the Chinese right now.
Absolutely.
China.
What's the latest on OneWeb?
Cool, good shout. Let's bring it back to the UK. So so OneWeb has become sort of fully funded now. So Bharti have invested an additional 500 million into the company, which means that the first tranche of these satellites is now fully funded, which considering it was bankrupt a couple of years ago to where they are now, that's pretty incredible. And talking of Russian launches as well, they actually launched 36 more OneWebs from Vostochny, the 8th launch, and that's 40% of the network up now.
Brilliant.
All that investment means that the UK government own about 19.3%. So you and me, Chris, have a stake in this OneWeb company. We're up against Musk.
I haven't seen a penny of this yet.
Which means, of course, they've got $2.4 billion of equity in this company with no debts, which is good news for the UK taxpayer, basically.
Absolutely.
And it's quite close to Elon Musk said he was investing 30 billion in Starlink, his version, of course.
Whoa.
Now, so we've got all of that. Now, what's the downstream problems of all this kind of stuff? Well, the Square Kilometre Array Observatory, which is an observatory that everyone's very, very excited about because it's loads and loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of telescopes, radio telescopes, and it should be able to unpick some of the mysteries of the universe. But these mega constellations are definitely affecting how they're designing them. The phrase is they change the game for the plans of these Square Kilometre Array. So they've worked out that OneWeb and SpaceX would account for about 4% loss of observations because they're going to have to take in the interference from those constellations.
That's significant.
That is pretty significant, isn't it? When you're talking about billions and billions and billions of dollars building an observatory to then have like a problem like that. But I think they're more concerned is OneWeb and SpaceX will expand their fleets. And of course, you'll have entrants like Kuiper from Amazon and the Chinese Guowang constellation. And that might have 13,000 satellites, the Chinese one. So it's like, well, I mean, it's just insane, isn't it? So, yeah, that's we've got to the point now where satellites are interfering with astronomy. And it's the two things I love in life, hating each other. It's always the way, isn't it?
Yeah,
but
of course.
So back to the UK Space Agency, they've just signed a memorandum of cooperation with the Japanese Space Agency, JAXA, and that's almost a decade after their first one that they signed. And that if you think about the significance of one of those things, there's 3 things that have easily been assisted and facilitated by that agreement a decade ago, and they're really cool. One is Bepi Colombo, which is, one of the crowns in ESA's spaceship fleet right now,
without a doubt.
And yes, 3 years ago I saw it being readied for launch in French Guiana. So there we go. Astroscale, of course, is a Japanese company that is over here also in the UK, and Harriet works for them. So that's pretty. Astroscale's, a lot of what they do, I should imagine, has been facilitated by this, by these type of agreements.
Yeah.
So it's obviously pretty important that the UK Space Agency have signed that, and so obviously it'd be quite neat to look out for what we're going to be doing with the Japanese and all the projects that get spun out of that.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing to be partnering with those amazing Japanese geniuses.
Yeah, they're very good at the tech stuff. Very good.
Yeah.
Let's go back to old Dickie Pickles.
Ah, Dickie.
Because it has been a good week for Dickie Pickles, hasn't it?
Yep, absolutely.
Because a lot earlier on this week, we had Virgin Orbit actually deploy 7 satellites into an orbit 500 kilometers above the planet. So, boom. That is now actually a pretty viable launch system. As far as I can make out, that is one of the first launch systems since the Electron. The Virgin Orbit are definitely in the mix now. They've got commercial payers. And there's always this problem of converting like your first rocket success into scaling it up into a commercial business. But I think Branson's sort of pumped so much money into this that it's kind of already scaled up. And so it looks like that they'll avoid those sort of growing pains that maybe SpaceX and the Electron had at the beginning of their sort of launch campaigns.
He's been knocking around a bit longer, though, hasn't he? Do you think there's part of it?
Yeah, but the really cool thing about it really is that Virgin Orbit can launch from anywhere, and as long as it's got a runway. And the extra exciting part about that for us is it's probably not going to be long now since we actually see a rocket launch, an orbital launch from the UK in Cornwall.
In Cornwall as well. Amazing.
Yeah, in Cornwall at the spaceport at Newquay Airport, essentially. So that's going to be really, really super mega exciting, like super exciting.
Love it.
So yeah, in fact, if you go way, way, way back, there's an interview with Spaceport Cornwall. Yeah, there's other locations like Guam, Japan, Brazil, places like that. But I wouldn't be at all surprised, particularly considering it's Dickie B's company, that they'll try and do a Cornish launch. It's going to be great. I suppose it depends
Cornish
what the
launch,
because it's all about the clients and the orbital inclination that it's got to go into, where the best place to fly out of is.
Yeah.
But the other funny news is that Dickie Pickles might be one of the kind of big space boys in space. He might be the first one to get there. Because Jeff
He's
Bezos,
got the chops. Let's face it, he's got the chops. He's
got
an
the
adventurer.
Oh yeah, and it will only be the second most dangerous thing he's ever done. That the balloon trip across the Atlantic still blows my mind. That he was
incredible.
He was
Absolutely
so
incredible.
Close to dying on that as well. I remember that as a kid, going, "What the hell?"
Yeah,
well, not that
same.
much. I suppose I wasn't a kid, but it was totally ludicrous. So he's got the bottle to do it. That's for sure. He's an adventurer. So what's funny about it is that Jeff Bezos announced that he was going on July the 20th, which is not long now, is it, to see the second richest man on Earth being blasted into space on the first crewed mission of New Shepard, which is pretty incredible. And he'll be with his brother. But actually, really excitingly, he will be with Wally Funk.
Oh, Wally.
Which I think was an absolutely fantastic choice. Because I think everyone thinks that Wally Funk deserves a ride into space. And so actually get the chance. And I think that's really, 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 really cool. And of course, they'll be going up with the auction winner on that flight as well, which of course could be Elon Musk himself.
I would love that so much.
It would be absolutely incredible. It'd be the funniest news story ever if Elon Musk had got the seat on the New Shepard. It would be very funny. But Richard Branson immediately went, oh, by the way, I'm flying sometime after July the 11th. So he might beat Bezos into space. And he's going up with pilot Dave McKay, of course, the Scottish astronaut, as I shall call him. Another pilot, Michael Mascuzzi, engineer Colin Bennett, instructor Beth Moses, and the Vice President of Government Affairs, Sarisha Bandla. So that will be a really exciting thing to watch Branson go up this month, I guess, into space.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. And it's so funny. I love the one-upmanship. It just drives things forward so much.
It doesn't even stop there because, of course, once Branson made his announcement, it must have truly have stuck in the claw of Blue Origin. So Bob Smith, who's the CEO of Blue Origin, said, "We wish him a great and safe flight, but they're not flying above the Kármán line. Then it's a very different experience." The worst thing about that is he's right, but it doesn't half come across as you know, a little bit petty and churlish, doesn't it? That.
Yeah, I love it.
I mean, what I was amazed really is that Elon Musk hasn't sort of chipped in and said, "Yeah, but they're neither of them are orbital." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But to imagine, like, just like on July the 10th, Musk is just going to send a selfie from like the moon.
But of course, Elon Musk has announced that he'll be launching the world's first all-civilian crew into orbit, and that's dubbed Inspiration 4. So that's probably sometime after September the 15th. I think that's the earliest that could possibly be. So probably this year. But the cool thing about it is that the toilet is going to be amazing, apparently, because the Dragon capsule that they're going up on, they've replaced the docking port because they don't need to dock with a cupola, like a big, glass dome.
Yeah.
Where you can look out into space. And the toilet happens to be in the cupola part of the spacecraft. And so when you go to the toilet, you'll be able to sort of sit there doing your business while looking out into the beauty of the cosmos.
A poo with a view.
Have a wee with glee. So just so you know, yes, the New Shepard gets to about 106 kilometers high, which is a Kármán line is 100 kilometers. So New Shepard, the crew capsule, does go, quite a long way over the Kármán line. That's pretty good. Virgin Galactic VSS Unity, the last time it flew, it got to 89 kilometers, which is over the 80 kilometers that is recognised by NASA as space, but not over, so in other words, you get your astronaut wings if you fly over 80 kilometers. And I believe if you really want to find what the sort of what is space and what's not, you should really talk to our old friend, Jonathan McDowell.
Yes.
Because he seems to be the expert on this. And it's funny, I told George this and he was sort of saying, it would just be the biggest news story ever, wouldn't it? If Richard Branson died in that Virgin Galactic thing, and so did Jeff Bezos.
It's pretty dark, George.
It's pretty dark, but I mean, like, we're all thinking it. We're all thinking it, going, because it is risky. Yeah. It's not like it's totally without risk, and it's like, we got, surely no one, it must have crossed other people's mind. But I was thinking, if there was any problems with the Virgin Galactic one, would Bezos still go? Like, if there was a tragedy with the Virgin Galactic one, and it went first, do you think Bezos would still go, or do you think they'd all bottle it and go?
I think he'd go. I think he would go because it's just completely different technology. It's a completely different project, and I just think it would be a proper bottle out to do that, because he's got to show faith in what he's doing as well. So yeah. I think almost, as a sort of like publicity thing, he'd probably be like, I'm doing this for Dickie B,
Oh, yeah, no, actually, that's a really good point. Yeah, I didn't think of that. I was thinking maybe he wouldn't go out of respect, but I suppose he could go with respect, couldn't he? It'd be like, I think he'd
rather go with respect than out of respect to sort of sit back. Definitely.
I don't know how much bad blood there is between Dickie B and Jeff Bezos. I don't.
But I
think
would
there is
imagine that there could be bad blood, but I imagine it doesn't go as far as wishing death upon.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Elon Musk thought that Jeff Bezos had shot one of his rockets with a rifle when it blew up on the launch pad that time. I mean, yeah, it's just totally bonkers. Talking of Elon Musk, I hadn't actually realised that Elon Musk turned 50 the other day.
Oh, what a party that must have been.
Yeah.
With the rule of six, but
So he's only a couple of months older than me. Does Elon Musk have 2 podcasts? Don't think
he doesn't.
Does he?
No, he doesn't. No? Does he have incredible curly grey hair, which just looks superb?
He's definitely had a hair transplant. I mean, Elon Musk was sort of losing his hair when he was like 20. Looked like
you got so much on him. Honestly, you got so much on him, Matt. Genuinely.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a couple of really cool papers that were handed into the Discord. One is called Past, Present and Future Stars That Can See Earth as Transiting Exoplanet. In other words, if aliens were looking for exoplanets, which ones would see Earth if they were looking for transiting exoplanets, the ones that sort of go in front of the star and make the light dip?
Yeah.
Because the reason why they're good is because if you can see the light dip, then the planet goes in front of the star as you're looking at it, and you'd be able to see the potentially see the composition of the atmosphere as long as you had a powerful enough telescope.
Yeah.
In terms of searching for life, that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool thing to happen.
Yeah.
So maybe aliens will find us first and do all the hard work. So this is why it's quite a cool paper, because they're trying to work out which stars could see Earth within 100. So all the stars within 100 parsecs, which is 326 light years or thereabouts, all the stars within that area, how many can see Earth as a transiting planet? And it turns out that there's 2,034 stars in total. And what they've done is they've looked over time. So it's not just now. They've kind of looked at the movement of all these stars and worked out, if you take the previous 5,000 years and the next 5,000 years. So 1,715 stars over that 5,000 year period before us have been able to see us. And in the next 5,000, another 319 will have been able to see us. And some of those have actually got known exoplanets. So 7 of them, in fact. So one is Ross 128. That could see Earth in the past. In 29 years, which I think is a funny short-term time, Teagarden star will be able to see us. And in 1,642 years, the TRAPPIST system will be able to see us. So that's super exciting.
Yeah.
And 75 of those 2,034 stars have had radio waves from the Earth wash over them already. So they may already be looking out for us.
That is absolutely mind-blowing stuff. And it's weird because we're just celebrating Louise Jenkins, and her early work would have contributed to this as well, which is
no, absolutely, because she catalogued all the stars within 10 parsecs, and this is all the stars within 100, 10 times further out than that. Oh no, absolutely. Yeah. These star systems, if there is a planet, if there's life, intelligent life on one of those planets looking out for transiting planets, and they see Earth, they'll know that it's interesting, and therefore quite likely to try and broadcast to us. And therefore, we should be treating those systems as a priority to pick up their broadcasts.
Yeah, absolutely. Unless all the satellites block them.
Unless there's some massive, great big Starlink, OneWeb, etc. satellite constellation in the way, which is pretty tedious, isn't it? Actually,
so we can't see space anymore. We've got an amazing internet; it's brilliant, but we just can't look out anymore.
We just can't look out anymore. There's 109 of those 2,000 stars are white dwarfs, so dead stellar remnants of stars that have essentially burnt through all their nuclear fuel.
Yeah.
Most searches for life concentrate on main sequence stars, so not on white dwarfs and things like that. But it might find out that we should probably look into that, because recently there was a giant planet that was orbiting WD-19, white dwarf 19, that basically maybe we might find rocky planets orbiting evolved stars, and therefore we might be able to sort of characterize these rocky planets in the habitable zone of white dwarfs, and look at that as well. So there could be some really intriguing places to look for life.
I would love it if there was something that just reached us from that. I mean, there's a good chance. There's a lot of them. I know we're not going to meet. It's going to be too difficult, but just a signal, just something, please.
Yeah, I mean, like if you think about it, it's 326 light years out, some of these. So it takes 326 years for a radio signal to get to us.
Yeah, I always think that, that if from one of the nearest exoplanets, if they were observing, what they would be seeing now is just some pretty horrific things going on the planet.
Yeah, well, they certainly wouldn't be able to see the Industrial Revolution even. So no.
They've been watching Henry VIII chopping all his wives' heads off. Like, oh, right, okay.
Yeah, there you go. Even the English are baddies at that point. Right. So, right. The other paper that got sent in is Earth-like habitable environments in the subsurface of Mars, and I absolutely love this one. J.D. Tarnas, J.F. Mustard et al. Now, this is really cool because I've often thought about this, is that there's loads and loads of life on Earth that's subterranean, and it just keeps going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper as well. Deep into the continental subsurface of Earth, there's these groundwaters that have been isolated for millions, if not billions of years.
Yeah.
As a result, organisms have evolved to sort of feed off, basically survive, not from photosynthesis and things like that, but from the emissions of radionuclides. So this is the energy released by atoms that emit radioactive decay, alpha particles, beta particles, gamma rays and stuff like that. And that produces oxidants and reductants in the surrounding rocks by this radioactive decay that can be used. These oxidants and reductants can be used to drive the metabolisms of these microorganisms. Now, this actually happens on Earth. So, this is something that's been sort of discovered in the last 3 or 4 decades. Water that's preserved many kilometres deep in the subsurface actually contains quite a huge biomass that are basically living off this redox reactions to drive their metabolisms. So we know that that's a thing. So if that's the case, the same thing could be happening on the Martian subsurface, because we're pretty certain that there can't be life on the surface because it's ridiculously harsh.
It's a toxic environment, I think.
Yeah, it's very toxic. Freezing, it's desiccating. There's lots of ionizing radiation, lots of oxidizing chemicals. So all these perchlorates there as well. Very low pressures, no liquid water. So it's no sort of Earth-like organism could survive in that environment. But if life evolved on the Mars surface in a similar way that it did to Earth when Mars was all wet and oceans were on there, then maybe some of that life has, managed to get down into the subsurface and is thriving down there on these radioactive derived oxidants. And
how big this may be? How big is this may be? I mean, because I think that sounds probable.
I think that sounds probable as well. I think it's pretty probable that you might find really basic life forms that are using this particular radioactive decay to feed off, basically. I mean, while there's an energy gradient, I guess you can have life that sort of speeds up entropy. It's like the universe wants to speed up entropy, and life's a good way of doing it. So it seems to be quite likely, I think, that. And here's the really surprising bit, is that somewhere like Mars, because it's got lower surface gravity, it means that I guess that the planet isn't as compressed, so you get larger volumes of fractures and pores that are deep down in the crust.
Right. Yeah.
In other words, there's more volume in there for this biomass to exist. And so, if anything, the conditions on Mars might actually be more favourable than they are on Earth for this type of life to exist.
Great papers, both of them, fantastic.
The next trip to Mars, that should be really taken into consideration, looking for extant life on Mars.
We need a massive drill.
You definitely need a massive drill. Of course, there will be one on the ExoMars rover, and they've been testing the parachutes out as well. Some good footage of that. So let's hope the ExoMars rover makes it down onto the surface, and we actually see that thing rolling around in a couple of years' time. That'd be
amazing. Yeah, absolutely
cool.
Really exciting.
Built here in Britain, of course. Well, mostly built here in Britain. So
yes.
Did you see the Super Heavy rolling out to the launch site?
I'm basically living I feel like I'm like living in a sci-fi movie now. That's it. I've just given up on just like accepting any kind of normality. Everything I see now, I'm just like completely blown away by.
I have to say that did look insanely impressive.
It's so good. It's so impressive. It's like, yeah, I mean, it is. It's just like our sci-fi fantasies are just becoming true every single day with things like this. So yeah, I did, and it's just beautiful.
Yeah, it did look insanely impressive. So that built in 6 weeks. But it won't fly. It won't fly. So it's just going on the test stand for ground tests. But the next one they build, and bear in mind they built it in 6 weeks, so presumably they can build them even quicker than that. That one will probably have a Starship put on top. And we might see in August. Or I can't believe it will be July, but in August we might actually see, an orbital flight, which would just be. I mean, that would blow my mind if that's the case.
Definitely. And I know a little additional. Like, by the way, there's the latest tracking camera footage of one of the Dragon boosters landing was just amazing. They're getting so much better at shooting those as well, and just seeing things like that are just like I say, I'm living in my own sci-fi fantasy now. It's just. It's amazing.
It is getting a bit more like a film, isn't it? Like a sci-fi film. I mean, it's still a long way off 2001 Space Odyssey, but we've had a few setbacks.
Yeah, just 1 or 2, and also we don't want to get to the point where Hal's like controlling the lives of our.
I love a bit of Hal. It already is. Do you know that I'm beginning to realise that Hal's really an allegory for Facebook and Instagram.
Oh my God! Yeah, and Siri and stuff like that, and
it's basically it is trying to kill us.
Genuinely.
Oh my gosh!
But there's memes, Matt. There's memes, and they're fun.
Right. So, Chris, where would people go if they enjoy the Interplanetary podcast?
If I really enjoyed the Interplanetary podcast, which I do actually, I would go to interplanetary.org.uk.
Nice.
Nice.
And if you enjoy it super much, you can go to www.patreon.com/interplanetary and join the party.
Join the party.
Obviously, we're on Instagram. I haven't really kept up with me Instagram, but I tweet.
He's a tweeter.
But really,
that's all he is. He's a tweeter.
A tweeter. I'm a twit. That's what
and also comparing you to Elon Musk again. Your tweets have a similar effect. You can literally affect. I can manipulate the stock market. Yeah.
The Pannier open market in Barnstable. I can definitely affect that with my tweets. That. Yeah, it's beautiful. Right. Doing anything special this week, Chris?
Well, I wanted to tell you because this evening, in fact, in half an hour, I'm going to Bidston Observatory over in the Wirral. Yeah, and I'm going there for a really special reason because they're doing AND Festival, which is Abandoned Normal Devices Festival, a screening The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou in an outdoor cinema at the observatory. So I'm so excited, even though it's going to be a bit rainy.
Oh God, it was absolutely brutal rain here earlier on. Like brutal.
Yeah, we're just going full waterproof umbrellas, and we're just going to sit and watch one of Wes Anderson's greatest masterpieces.
Yeah. It's good. It's good.
How about you?
I shall be watching Family Guy Mickey takes of Wes Anderson films, just as a sort of
I like it.
Just to balance it up, because we've got to keep the universe balanced. I think.
Yes, you have, and of course, Wes Anderson would totally appreciate being made fun of.
Right, that's it, Chris. I'm going to say goodbye to the Spudcats.
Do it.
Bye, Spudcats.
Bye, Spudcats. Bye, Spudcats. Bye, Spudcats.